of March is hereby called to order. Start with a roll call.
Mr. Hogan.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan. Mr. Driver.
Here.
Mr. Master.
Here. Okay, have all the members of the board had an opportunity to read the minutes from the 27th meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Any changes, additions to those minutes?
No.
Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as they're written?
A motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved as read. Okay, we only have one item on the agenda planned for tonight, and that's a discussion of the accessory apartment issue. The council is considering a change to the LDR whereby they're redefining the definitions of a single-family home to include allowing the use of an accessory apartment for family members only. That would eliminate using those accessory structures as a rental property. There's been some resistance on the part of the community to the statute the way it is written, and as a result, the council has asked this committee for its input. So the way I'd like to hold this out, I'd like to start and ask the city for their position for some background. We'll then open up for input from the public before we begin our discussion as a member of the board. Mel, can you give us some background on the city's position on this?
Sure. I flashed up on the screen there, section 2.04.02. That's where it lists the accessory structures by land use district. Residential low density, tourist residential, residential general, what is allowed are tool sheds, garages, greenhouses, storage sheds, pools and hot tubs, gazebos, private recreational facilities, dog houses, bath houses, and other customary uses not restricted or prohibited either specifically or by nature of performance below. What is restricted are playhouses, 100 square feet maximum. That's usually a 10 by 10 little playhouse. And what's prohibited is apartments, businesses, and any structure with a sign attached to it. The city's position is the land development regulations are not intended to allow living quarters in a shed in the backyard, in part because they're unsafe, because most of them have not been inspected by the building inspectors to ensure they are livable and are same standards of that of your home. And so when it came to our attention that there was some renting going on of something of similar things, we filed the proper citation, went through the hearing process, came back that due to the code enforcement officer not being at the meeting, the judge just threw it out, so we have to start over. But I will mention to everyone that the mere fact that we're talking about a rental property in this particular instance has nothing to do with the LDR. You can see by the LDR it doesn't say anything about renting at all. The mere existence of an accessory structure for living standards is prohibited by the LDR. So when the board discussed that, they felt that maybe it would be okay to have a family member stay in a structure, because a lot of people do have a shed in the backyard that has been improved to the point where they might have a pool table, you know, things of that sort in there. They might even have a sink, a toilet, a Murphy bed, something of that sort. So the question was, is it so bad to have a family member spend the weekend in there if they're down overflow in the house? And so that was the charge of the city attorney, was to craft some language that would allow family members to stay in such structures. And so that's what you have before you this evening.
And I will note that we have passed some variances in the past which would have allowed, under the existing LDR the way it is now, which would allow a family member to stay in that accessory structure. So we have done that in the past, and it is currently happening here in New Mexico Beach. Anything else?
That's it. That's the groundwork.
Okay. I'd like to open it up for public comment now. If you have something to say, please raise your hand. Come to the podium, state your name and your address. Anybody in the audience care to address the board? Yes, ma'am.
Connie Reisinger, 504 Maryland Boulevard. When this first came up, I was extremely surprised, because to me this is an issue that shouldn't even be discussed tonight. I live in Section D, which is single family. low density. I live by myself, as do many other people. I am very much opposed to having accessory buildings become rentals. I read the letter that our lawyer wrote, and he was concerned, not showing his likes or dislikes about it, but being factual, that it would be difficult to check out if the accessory was being used by a family member or someone else. There's no way to really go check that out. I don't think there is a person that lives in this town that objects to their neighbor's family coming and spending a week with them or something. I think this is a non-issue. You're not going to go and tell them they can't, your family all has to stay wherever. So my main concern on all of this is I don't want to see rentals starting to crop up in my section, because I don't think it's fair to the people that bought their homes, live there, and feel safe. I would not feel safe if all of a sudden we start having rental accessory places with a flux of people going in and out, and you never know who was there or who wasn't. I'm not opposed to you adding family. I just hope it doesn't snowball and become a real problem for the city, trying to enforce it if it becomes abused. Thank you.
Anyone else? Tanya, I'll get you next.
Oh,
No, go ahead, man.
my name is Lynn Tuttle, and I live on 2501 Highway 98, 25th Street. What concerns me here is how are you defining family? Is it immediate family? Is it somebody you're just saying is family so they can stay there? Do these places have electricity? Do they have bathrooms? Or what are the standards for them? Are there any standards for them? I just don't understand the whole thing. It seemed the other night at the meeting, everybody was opposed to it who went to the meeting. And I don't see why we're even, really discussing this, having outbuildings where you're going to have rentals or sheds that are going to turn into rental property. Aren't there some standards there? Do they have plumbing? Do they have electricity? Do they have windows? I mean, what is this? It sounds, I'm a relative newbie here, but it sounds really far-fetched from anything the beach would want to do. To have, and who can say who's family? How are you defining that?
Well, if you look, family is defined, relatives are defined.
It's what?
They are defined. If you look at the screen over here on the left.
Oh, okay.
Actually, both of your questions were answered. The first part there, just below the yellow part, says that the detached structure complies with the Florida Building Code, which means it would have to have sufficient electricity, plumbing, and that sort of thing. And the definition of a relative is a spouse, child, grandparent, great-grandparent, sibling, first cousin, aunt, uncle, great-uncle, niece, nephew, whether related by whole or half-blood or affinity or by adoption.
Okay. It hadn't scrolled down to that. Sorry, I hadn't read that. But I still think family, who's going to go around and check that? Are you on an honor system here? You can, I don't know. It just seems like a far-fetched idea, and that we don't need it. We have enough places for people to stay rather than in somebody's, I'll call it a shed, out in their backyard.
Thank you, ma'am. Tanya.
I want to address the ordinance, but first I just want to clear up some things if I could, if you guys would just give me a minute. And Adrian and Mel, if I say anything that's inaccurate, please stop me and correct me. State law says that a vacation rental is residential use. In 2011, the state legislature passed a law that said that municipalities can't restrict vacation rentals unless they already had an ordinance on the books. That was in 2011. Right now, we have maybe 50 vacation rentals in residential zoning. I'm looking at you, Adrian. I think that's about right. Last time, the number around 50. We have people in town who rent out their condos, their duplexes, their accessory apartments, their whole house, bedrooms in their house, because we have 0 ordinances on the books today regulating vacation rentals. Correct? Okay. So if we have laws on the books, then I'm sure everyone would be happy to comply and follow those laws, but we just don't have them. We would be happy to. If you're mad at anybody because you have a vacation rental within a stone's throw of you, we're only 1.25 square miles. It's impossible to think in our community you're going to live anywhere without a vacation rental close to you. But if you're mad, then you need to be mad at the council who was in place in 2011, because they had the opportunity before the law was passed to put ordinances on the books to regulate vacation rentals, restrict them by zoning, and they did nothing. So if you want to blame somebody, you can blame the council then. Mel wasn't here then. He didn't have anything to do with it. None of these people had anything to do with it. I wasn't on the council. I didn't have anything to do with it. But that's the fact. That's how it is today. But to the accessory detached habitable guest house, I've talked to several of the council members about the packet that I saw, and I know they have some concerns because it was never intended to be an accessory apartment. No kitchen, it shouldn't function as a dwelling unit, and I think I see that in your notes, but it was called an accessory apartment, so that was kind of confusing. What these are is they're detached, for lack of a better word, a guest suite, a bed and a bath. There are several throughout the city. Ours isn't the only one. There are many, and I know Mel has a list of those that have been publicly advertised, and then there are quite a few that people are staying low about because they thought they could use them. Now they're finding that they can't, and we're not. It's not our job to turn them in, but there are many. They're not sheds. Ours has been properly permitted. It meets Florida building code. The city made us upgrade the electrical, the plumbing. It has impact windows. It meets all Florida building code for a habitable structure. It's not a shed in somebody's backyard. I have seen several of the ones that are in play, and I know you probably have, or you've seen pictures of them. They're very nice. There was a comment that Nick made in his write-up that the concern was that as the properties change hands, that maybe these would go into a state of disrepair. There are a lot of tool sheds in Mexico Beach that need to be torn down. They're in a state of disrepair. And we have ordinances on the books that would take care of that. Just like if your main home is in a state of disrepair, there are ordinances on the books. But what we found in Mexico Beach is right the opposite of what Nick said. We found that when people are buying these properties, just like we did, they're improving those guest houses. They're improving the structures. They're making them look nice. They're adding taxable value to the property and improving the community. But I think we're a tourist community, and any property owner should be able to use their property as they see fit. And I think for government to say that you can only let families stay in your guest room is, I think, overreaching at its best. Based on the council members I've spoken with, their intent of putting the family restriction on there is they don't want them to be rented. Well, if they don't want them to be rented, then they can make that rule. You guys can recommend that rule. That's something that you can do. But to try to specify family, I think it's going to be problematic just based on my training as an elected official. I think that it opens up a big can of worms, and I think the council understands that. So, but that they were just trying to get around, that's what they told me, they were just trying to get around the rental issue, which I think they can just make that decision if that's what they want to do. So I don't think the families I think the council may rethink that just based on the ones that I've talked to. But I hope that you will err on the side of property owners' rights. If you look in that section about accessory structures, there's already rules in place today about the size, the height. It can't be a certain percentage larger than your main dwelling. All of those things are already in the land development regulations today. It says today that they have to meet Florida building code for the use. All of that is in there, so it's not a big change. It's just to clarify what that use can be. So, thank you for your time. Thanks for listening.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Lisa Logan, 402 Maryland. This is just a question that I would like someone to try to answer. The first LDR was instituted in 1991, I believe. Is that correct, Adrian or Jim?
91 is correct.
91. Okay. It appears from the research I have done that a large number of the accessory structures that are being used in questionable ways do not have permits. Many of them are not on the tax rolls. So in those cases, would those not be illegal structures that the city has simply ignored or never known about? And if you've got those, is the city going to do anything about those? If they don't have permits and they're not on the tax rolls, then that's something that you would need to look at, I would think. Can you give me some thoughts on that? I mean, I'm truly asking the question.
I can't. And that's the same issue as enforcing the statute the way it's written. How do you do that? I mean, that's a question that needs to be asked. And I don't want to go into detail here, but it looks like there's some issues that haven't been well thought out when they presented the statute as it's written right now.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could give just a quick update, we have devised a letter. It's almost ready for prime time to send out to everyone who has a shed and or accessory structure in their backyard, to let them know that depending on how they use that structure, it may or may not be in violation. This letter's going to be sent out not to accuse anybody of anything, but to let them know that there's a potential violation depending on how you use it.
How have you identified those people that you're going to send that letter out to?
Over the years, we have had requests to the building department to look at accessory structures. For instance, somebody has a shed in the backyard, they want to improve it to put a pool table and a sink and that sort of thing. We'd have to make sure the electricity was upgraded and the plumbing was upgraded. So a lot we know about. And there's others we know about just because of rumors going around, and you can look in the backyard and see that there's a accessory structure.
So how about those that, if somebody put a tool shed up or something and that didn't have a building permit, brought in one of those tool time buildings, 6x8 or something like that, or 10x14, and put it in the backyard? What about those people?
That's just a tool shed. Those are allowed.
Okay, so you're only talking about things that would fit under a livable.
Exactly.
Okay, now, are these structures supposed to be on the tax rolls with Bay County?
Well, if they're upgraded and the building permit is issued for their upgrade, it would be on the tax rolls. But if you build a 10x10 shed in the backyard, it's been there for 50 years, it's probably not.
Okay, yes ma'am.
May I say something again?
Yes ma'am.
As a property owner, I have feelings and I have desires and I have wants also. And we seem to really not look at a lot of our individual property owners. We're in one section back there and we are in section D. This town is full of rentals. I chose to live back there because it's quiet, the lots are bigger, and they are single families. I did not choose to live where there's a lot of rentals. Now, I understand, of course, you can rent a house. That is not the same thing as having an accessory building and renting it out. There's no way it's the same. I am asking you, please, to think about those of us that want to live peacefully without having to always worry about changing everything because a few people want to rent out some structures. I would like to see our planning, our comp plan just left alone, just left the way it is. Thank you.
If I could add to that, our comp plan is now not in favor with the state, so it has to be redone. There's a lot of sections that are inappropriate, so we need to make that change. The LDR, however, is the next thing we're going to do. But I will make one comment about rentals. I don't think many people really are upset about long-term rentals. I think most of us are concerned about the short-term rentals. I remember when I first got here about 3.5 years ago, I got a visit from some people in a certain section of town on the east side that they were concerned about the weekend partiers who come to rent something for the weekend, and they're out at night, they're drunk, they're loud, they make noise, and they felt very unsafe. And so if you want someone else to get mad at the state of Florida, because you cannot restrict rentals in a residential area.
Tanya?
I live in a residential area also, and I have, on the street where I live, I have one long-term rental and at least one, and then at the end of the street, a second vacation rental. Those rentals are, they're just a fact of life. And if the house next door to me, if the people with the long-term rental move out, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that doesn't become a vacation rental. We live in a beach community. So having, and then there's another house down the street from me where they rent a bedroom, and it's advertised. That really doesn't bother me. In fact, that bothers me less because there are people there. It bothers me less to have structures, if there are bedroom structures, if they're even detached, if it's a bedroom suite, that doesn't bother me because the people are there in the house, at least. I would prefer that over a house that's just rented by the week and the people that own it are in Georgia and they have no idea what's going on. So at least if people are there, they know what's happening. So it's just a fact of where we live. We have rentals, and we're a vacation community, and that's the way it's going to be, I think, always. That's one of the reasons I moved here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tanya?
Just want to make a comment about the question about how do you enforce it. Accessory apartments today, same issue with accessory apartments. You have to get permission from the city. It has to be properly permitted and improved. And accessory apartments have to go before the council to be approved. So perhaps the answer is if someone wants to, they've got to go through the building department to do the improvements. If they already have one and it hasn't been inspected by the city, then it should be inspected by the city. You require that it be inspected. And before they start using it, maybe it has to go before the council to make sure that it's been properly inspected by the city. It's no different than the accessory apartments today. It's the same issue. It's just that the accessory apartments today are dwelling units. They can be rented out, long-term, short-term, whatever. So,
Right. Yes, sir. Somebody, sir, did you ever raise your hand here? Guess not. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bobby Paul, 215 Kim Cove. Let me offer this out to you. I have a double lot joined together. I have a house on one. I have a shop on the other. I can, according to this, take this shop, make a bedroom with probably a bath in it, right? According to what we're talking about.
As long as your lots are combined into one. As long as your lots are combined into one.
They're combined.
Okay.
They're combined.
Then you're good.
Okay. I parked my motorhome beside the shop. Combined lots. I do what y'all say, I make a bedroom with a bath. I go to the county, divide the lots, which I can do. You said I could because it was joined in the county. I could sell this house here. I could live in this bedroom in my motorhome. It is all laid out properly because this has been done before. Houses have been split with a garage separate. Y'all have built garages and people are living in them. Keep this in mind when y'all decide what you're going to do. There's so many other ways that could be used against what you want done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close public discussion. We'll now begin board discussion. And what I'd like to do is take it individually, start down David. We'll work our way this way.
Well, number one, as a property owner, I have to sign that I either rent my house or I don't. So that's correct, right? If my home is considered a rental property, then I have to tell Bay County that is a rental property. I can't homestead that.
If you rent it, you can't homestead it, you're right.
Right.
But you don't have
Okay,
to
so
tell
what
Bay County.
happens then if you build an accessory apartment for rental? How will the tax roll view that?
I can answer that,
Well,
and I know the answer.
She's a good one to know.
What the state law says is that you reach out to your county, and if it's rented if it's the entire structure, after 2 years, you can't claim homestead anymore. But if it's like a habitable guest cottage, not the entire structure, and you work with your county and they work with you, and you typically keep your homestead exemption. And in most cases, Bay County, if it's a habitable guest structure and you're only renting out one room, you keep your homestead exemption as long as that's your primary residence.
But if it was an accessory structure, you wouldn't have homestead on that, would you?
It's the property, not the structure. The
I got
homestead is
screwed
on the
15
property.
years ago. Okay.
Mel, isn't it true if a house is rented or a structure's rented, there has to be a permit through Bay County? So they would know on the tax rolls whether there's rental going on or not?
Not at all. They just classify it as a residence.
Because when we rented our house, we had to get a permit to rent it, but it had to be renewed yearly. I assume that was a county permit. I don't recall.
Well, you're probably talking about the homestead process.
No.
Because I homesteaded mine, I get a card every year that I fill out
No, that
to
wasn't
ensure
it.
that I'm still homesteading it.
Was it the $4 license from the city?
I think it was more expensive than that. I think it was a county.
I can answer that.
Okay.
You have to register with the state, and you have to register with the county, and pay sales tax and bed tax if it's a short-term rental. If it's a long-term rental, you don't register with anyone, but you still have to pay sales tax through your income
Okay,
tax.
right.
for that. The only permit you have to have is from the city, and the city will give you your vacation rental permit.
So what's defined as short-term or long-term? Do you know?
6 months or less.
6 months or
6
less.
months?
Okay, what about, how does this impact a pad for an RV? I mean, I know we're talking apples and oranges here, but if somebody put a pad up in their yard and decided to rent it out to vacationers,
You can't do that.
You're
you
not
can't
allowed
do,
to.
you can't do that now.
That's exactly
Okay,
right.
okay. So then, okay, that kind of answers a question for me right there. Then if you can't do that right now, then I don't really see why I should, be allowed to build an accessory apartment and rent it out.
Alex?
Being kind of new here and not with the history of what's going on, what I'm hearing initially was the real issue was a safety issue, that these accessory buildings weren't to standards of any type. And that's really why we were opposed to it. Am I wrong in that thinking there. But somehow I understand how a lot of you people feel that you're threatened by the tenants that may be in those accessory buildings, and I do understand that completely. In the same token, I also understand the rights of homeowners and landowners, that they should have a certain right in what they do with their property. So I'm kind of torn between the rights of individuals and safety issues. The safety issues can be fixed because they have to meet codes and they have to meet all the ordinances that have been already established or are going to be established. The other issue, though, is the fear of people and who they rent to. Do we have the right to tell a landowner you can rent to only certain people, whether they be relatives or not? Not being a lawyer, I couldn't really answer that, whether it meets any type of litigation. I basically believe, and this is just my opinion, is that I'm a landowner. And if I have a nice house and I have a nice accessory building that meets standards and codes, I don't really see an issue with me renting it out. I should be held accountable, however, for who I rent it to, and should have to answer to the city if there's any problems with that. Again, I'm not sure, Mel mentioned about a letter going out and I'm not familiar with it, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to see it about that. But basically, I don't know. I just think I'd have to discuss it more with this committee here to get more of their input.
Bill?
I've spoken to some of my neighbors and people I see in the city, and really I get probably a 50-50 discussion. And you know, part of the reason we're here, it isn't only what I think, it's what you think. And in discussing that, some of the interesting things that were brought up are very similar to what you've brought up tonight. Do the accessory structures go by the same setbacks, or are they setbacks similar to a shed? Where a shed you can put 5 feet from the back line. Most of the setbacks we have are 10 feet in the back, 7.5 on the side. So I think that's something that we would have to look at. Also, the questions come up, do they have to be in the backyard? Can they be in the side yard? We've got individuals, like the individual spoke, that has double lots. Certainly they could combine them and not only put one out there, they could put 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how many would fit there. So as some other people have said, they live in a single family residential area, tourist, whatever, and they didn't expect to have 4 rental homes next to them when there's maybe not a duplex in the whole subdivision. Now suddenly they've got 4 accessory structures. Since they're not allowed, and I don't think we've got any regulations on the books that kind of control what's happened. I know some of these are very nice, you can't see them from the street, and I'm sure there's others that maybe aren't so nice and need to be gone through. So I'm really on the fence on this one. As a landowner, I wouldn't want to live next to those 4 newly constructed rental units in a low residential area. That's just my opinion. I think that where we're hung up here is it's good for some people and not good for other people, and that's just the way it is. I like the way it is on the books now. It's worked okay. I know we've got however many we have in town, and I'm just right now in favor of really not having any. And I'm still on the fence on that a little bit, but we'll have discussion and get more input from all of you, which we certainly appreciate. That's just my personal feeling now.
It appears to me that it comes down to an issue of conflicting values, okay? First of all, ensuring property rights, and the key thing here is consistent with the general welfare. And we're talking the property rights of the property owner and also property rights of the people that live in the neighborhood and our neighbors, what their expectations are of living in a residential neighborhood. And that's where the real conflict comes in. Having reviewed the city attorney's memo, I also agree with a lot of things he said as far as enforcement issues, it's somebody's word on its family living there and everything else. And I'm of the opinion that the statute, the way it's written now, kind of opens up a whole can of worms. Under the process we currently have in the LDR now and in the comp plan, if somebody wants to rent an accessory structure out, there is a process for them to go through, and they simply have to go through that process and do it. If you want to bring a family member in and have them in that accessory structure, like I mentioned before, we've issued variances allowing them to do that. I don't see any reason to create a whole new statute to address something that currently works when the processes are in place. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that we as a committee ought to recommend disapproval and retain the current statute the way it is now and the processes the way they currently are on the books. That's what I would recommend that we do. In addition to that, some of the comments from the audience have also brought up some things that I think as a committee that we need to work on. The first is the LDR. Okay, we also in the LDR need to come up and address short-term and long-term rentals, and then we may want to take a look at the comp plan that we're currently working on and see if we need to put this somewhere else there in the comp plan. But that's kind of the way I see we are now. We're at conflict with property values and what people's expectations are. And I think they're met by what we currently have and because there are processes in place. So I would recommend disapproval. Anyone else on the committee?
The way it's written up, to enforce this would just be, to me, a nightmare. I can't imagine the city having to.
I really don't want to get a call from a neighbor saying, I don't think they're their first cousin, they're their best friends. You need to go check that out.
And yeah, right now.
Well, you've got privacy issues if you try and do something like that.
Get the call.
You will definitely get the call.
Exactly.
Yeah, and, somebody just put up a little tool shed behind their house, one of my neighbors, and it's just god-awful ugly, and I can't imagine them putting up a structure and renting it out. I didn't move there for that.
Well, but they have to meet certain requirements based on the state codes.
They can't be ugly.
Okay, any more discussion by the board?
I think it's kind of interesting. One of the things that when we were going through the comp plan that we talked about was a minimum square footage for houses. And we kind of went around and around on that. So here where we talked about a minimum square footage of 750 was kind of what we were thinking about. That went up to the council, wasn't approved and stuff like that. So we're back to kind of having, what's the minimum square footage for this type of dwelling that we're talking about? Is it 10 by 10? Is it 10 by 20? Does it have to have a bathroom? Can it just be a bunk room, a bedroom? And so even if we were to move forward and approve these, I think there's a lot of regulations and a lot of thought process that needs to go in it to make sure we end up with a quality product that we want to have in Mexico Beach. So I think that complicates things a little bit. It's not a reason not to do it, but if we do move forward on that, there needs to be stiff guidelines in a ruler or some sort of enforcement for the town to be able to come and say, you built your accessory structure as a tool shed, it doesn't have a bathroom, it doesn't meet code, and now people are in there. They have to have something to say to fine them or do something so we can enforce it. Otherwise, it's just Katie bar the door. People are going to be able to do what they want to do, which is true with almost anything.
Anyone else on the
Jim,
board?
you had-
Well, we're done with the public input.
Okay.
They had their opportunity.
No, I can tell you something that's interesting about the wood versus dozier. Look it up.
Ma'am?
It's was a ruling in the Supreme Court that when you buy into a neighborhood, you enter into contracts with the other neighbors. And they said that you can't change the neighborhood without everyone agreeing. And that came from the Florida Supreme Court.
Okay, can I get a motion from a member of the committee on whether they want to recommend approval or disapproval of the new statute?
I'll make a motion to disapprove.
So that you're putting forth a motion that we recommend disapproval of the statute
Of this one.
to the council. Okay. Second.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion?
Recommend disapproval of the statute as currently written to the city council.
Thank you.
Just clarification, are you continuing to work on it, or are we just disapproving the change, saying it as is, and the mere existence of these is illegal?
Yeah, geez.
This one,
Okay.
just looking at it for me, it's not working.
Can I
It's also got holes in it where you have to fill in the blank for square footage and.
I think the intent is for
Let's-
you to formulate a recommendation to
Right.
change it, not necessarily this, but any recommendation. By doing nothing and recommending nothing, you're recommending it's fine as written, and they're all illegal.
Okay,
My-
let me give up chairmanship and let me make a motion. Okay? Bill, you're in charge. Okay. I recommend that we disapprove the statute as it's currently written, retain the current statute, and allow use of accessory structures for habitation by going through the processes that are currently in place in the city. And that we look at this issue further and staff it in greater detail before it's brought up again.
You had a motion on the floor.
We didn't have a second. Oh, you did? Okay, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I will,
Okay, no, we got a motion on the floor and seconded.
He can withdraw his motion.
Yeah. You're gonna, I'll withdraw my second.
I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
Oh, jeez. You had a motion.
So we have a new motion.
So we have a new motion. Is that we recommend disapproval, retain the current statute, and that use the current processes in place to allow habitation of those accessory structures. And you're smiling.
I am, because I don't think we currently allow it, so that's
Right,
the
that was-
question. I mean,
Well, we've got rentals on accessory structures. She's got all the paperwork back there. Is that not correct?
skip the word rental. Rental doesn't matter. We have accessory structures all over town that are illegal the way this is written.
Right. The LDR doesn't allow
Correct.
for accessory structures. Is where we're
Correct.
hung up, I think. So by,
That's why I'm confused at what I'm writing.
Well, they allow accessory structures, but not accessory structures for habitation.
Correct.
okay, good point.
So then, back to the original of just straight disapproval.
Follow the current process and not allow inhabitable structures. I mean,
I agree.
So you're saying all these accessory structures are currently being rented are illegal?
or just live.
Or if a family member is currently living there illegally?
That's correct. Rental has no bearing. If you let Uncle Joe stay back there, you're breaking the law.
Mel, one question, when this was voted on by the council and kind of put back to us, did the council give any direction, because I wasn't at the meeting on that one, did they give any direction on whether they approve or disapprove, or they just lobbed it back to us?
Well, honestly, they lobbed it to you guys. They established that they wanted to consider family members staying in an accessory structure, and that's the farthest they went. And our city attorney was given the task of coming up with some language that he could live with that could make it happen. And so that's why you are here tonight, to review that and either say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't.
Well, if you're gonna allow family, I mean, then my opinion is if you're gonna allow family members to stay in an accessory structure, then it should be allowed to be rented out. Even regardless of what the people in the neighborhood, that's consistent with property rights.
I think the motion needs to be a recommended change or a recommendation not to change anything. I think that would make it clear, right?
Then I would okay, well, I'd go back with your original motion then.
It's just to drop what it is here and just move on. Nothing changes.
You could just say, you don't want to consider this change in the LDR.
Well, no, I've already addressed that we need to look at that in the LDR, and we also need to look at it if we have to put something in the comp plan too. But it needs to be thoroughly staffed rather than just, because right now there's a lot missing here, I think.
I'll make a motion that we not table it, but schedule a workshop so we can have more input and be better prepared to make a decision on this. In the interim, I'd like Mel to get some input from the council as to what exactly in writing they're looking for from us.
I say recommend it yes or no and let them sort it out.
Yeah.
Yes or no on this?
Yeah.
I say we recommend this change or we recommend no changes. I mean, that's simple, cut and dry, move on.
Yeah. Well, I would recommend no change.
Okay, my original motion then, just
To
to
recommend disapproval. Retain the
disapproval,
current
and
statute.
that's it, period.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, so it's been recommended that we recommend that the council disapprove the statute, the proposed statute, and retain the current statute.
Or just say that you're recommending no change in the LDR.
This is a working draft. This isn't proposed by anybody but us for you to work on.
Okay.
So there is no,
Recommend no change to the LDR.
I second it.
Have a roll call vote?
Mr. Masters,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Chair Bush.
Yes.
Mr. Driver.
Yes.
I'm not sure what we did.
You didn't do anything.
Basically, we didn't do anything. We have, if we could, we're working on a comp plan now, which basically drives the land development regulations. And I think the most people we've had at a meeting where we have these workshops on the comp plan was the first one we had, where we determined what values we wanted to have in Mexico Beach. And then the most we've had since then is probably 2 or 3 people. So if you guys, when we discuss these issues in the future, it'll be put out there when we're talking about that. I'd like to get your input when we're discussing the LDR, rather than we're just doing something what we feel. We need more public input on what we're doing, because we're going to have to live with this for the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, so that takes care of that issue. We have another comp plan meeting scheduled on the 24th of April. We will not be discussing this issue at that time. We've got some other issues to discuss, but do you have anything else?
And that's the 24th at 1 p.m.?
24th at 1 p.m. That's
And
correct.
when is the meeting that you're going to come to the city council meeting with Alera?
I wanted to talk about, I mean, this is just me as a citizen talking about, or are you talking about for the comp plan?
For the comp plan.
Oh, for the comp plan? When we give them the conservation element.
There's still a meeting going on.
When we give them the conservation element that has to be into the state by the 1st of June, just present it to them formally and then give them an update of where we are on the comp plan, when they can expect the rest of the comp plan. So probably take me 2 to 3 minutes.
And that's going to be,
That would be on the next city council meeting.
which is a week from tonight.
Well, we haven't got, no, it wouldn't be that one because I won't be here. But Alara hasn't gotten the new one written up yet either. So
Right.
after she gets the new one written up, it'd probably be the first meeting in April?
The 24th is also our city council meeting that's at 9 a.m. in the morning. Is that the one I think you were talking about, coming with her? And she'd stay all the way till the 1 o'clock meeting as well?
Yeah, but I won't be here then, so if it's
On the
that one, it would
24th?
have to be Bill to do it. Of April, yeah, 24th of April.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably the one. I've got it written down in my other book.
Okay.
I can give you a call tomorrow.
Well, we can work, that's not a problem.
Okay.
That's not
But
pertinent.
that's written, I got 2 books, and that's in my other book.
Right. But I have nothing further.
Okay. There being no further business before the board, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? A motion is carried. The meeting for the March 6th is hereby adjourned. I need to give, I'll give